Hello, everyone. You're listening to the Small Business Ho. My name is Swire Ho, your host for the show. My guest today is Eric Dunavant. He is an expert in the financial service industry for over 2 decades. Eric has been featured in various media outlets, such as the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Business Insider. He's worked with the top wealth advisor and received multiple awards in different areas in finance. Happy to have you on the show, Eric.
Swire, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I know I couldn't stop asking you a question before the show, but before I jump on to our conversation, would you mind to share a little bit about your journey and how did you get to be what you become today?
Yeah, a quick walk through my journey is not necessarily quick, but I'll just tell you, I was raised in a small town in West Texas. My dad was a veterinarian. My mom stayed at home. I had kind of this idyllic life until I hit my freshman year of high school when my mom passed away. And we buried my mom, and my dad is running the house, and he's a small business owner. And my dad didn't pay attention to a lot of the little things, medical insurance and other things like that. By my senior year of high school, he filed bankruptcy. And that entire experience kind of shifted my world. The reason I tell that story is it really kind of shifted my world because that led me on, I like to say that I help people redefine success. And we were talking about that beforehand, that's what we were going to talk about in the show. But at that moment, my definition of success was I want to be so wealthy that problem never happens to me. So I wanted to have so much money that if someone passed away or something happened, it would never bankrupt me. And so I went on a pursuit of career and finance and things like that to try and just accumulate money and wealth. And it made me miserable. I ended up marrying my wife, and it was just at a point we were completely disconnected. And I had an opportunity to kind of hit a reset and just say, what would it look like to look at life from a different perspective, to redefine success of what if success was relationships and faith and other places than what would happen. And in the course of doing that, and I've had several iterations of that, but in the course of doing that, my financial life started to work. And so that's a 1,000 foot overview. I do run a financial services practice. I run a coaching practice. But more than anything, what I want to help people do is redefine success in order to make an impact, because I think that's the most important thing is what impact are we making? And then create generational prosperity. And what I found is the majority of people that I meet who are chasing money for money's sake end up realizing that there's no real wealth or real return in that.
Thank you for sharing that story, Eric. Like I was telling Eric before the show, I listened to a podcast. I'm a fitness buff, and I listened to Dan John from Dan John University. He trained NFL player, all the highest level athletes for their fitness goal. But he actually got a question from a listener today, and he actually answered that during the show. What does success means to you? What success means to an NFL player will different than people like I'm middle age, I'm training for wealth and health, and it means different things. So, going back to, like you mentioned, Eric, seems like money didn't solve your problem, right? You were out seeking the best and biggest pile of money that you're looking for. It didn't solve your problem. So what would you say, like who defined your model for success, at least in the financial world?
Well, so it's kind of come in a couple of different iterations. Like at first it was, success was being in a position. So my wife got pregnant with my youngest son. So there was a season where success was, do we have enough for her to stay at home so she doesn't have to work outside the home, right? And then as the kids got older, some of the school systems in the state of Louisiana are not the greatest. And so it was, okay, success right now means, can we afford to send our kids to private school to get them the best education and to give them a leg up and provide? And I could go through example after example, but Swire, for me, what it's always really kind of come back to is two key things. What kind of impact can I have on my family to give them opportunity, for my wife to stay home? That's opportunity to my kids to have their mother at home. Opportunity for a better education. So that's the first definition of success. And then I also truly believe that when you have success, when you have blessing, you have a responsibility to make an impact and help those who don't. And so how do, the definition of success was also, how much could we help the local food bank, or how much could we help the local pregnancy crisis center, or things like that. And so those two things kind of went hand in hand and have gone hand in hand on the journey along the way.
It's funny that you bring it up that way. That's kind of how we're going through in my business. And I'm originally from Hong Kong. If you have met people from Hong Kong before, they're always on the get-go, right? They want to be the top guy. They want to have a lot of money. They want to go to a fancy restaurant, all their cars and things like that. So my mom still lives there. And actually, when I was running my first business, she asked me, where do you want to be? Do you want to be the richest Chinese man in America? I told her, really, no, I just want to provide for the family, maybe go out, have some, fancy dinners sometimes. And, to the end, I told her that I wanted to be able to retire early and do the things that I love, but I'm able to support those little hobbies that I have. And then like that kind of, it's not the models that she wanted, and the mind for most people. Why would you retire if you could work all this and you can grow your business to 100 people, whatever that might be? So
Right.
like, is it right or wrong to choose the path that are comfortable? Or, how would you advise a client, when they're kind of going through where they wanted to be in their life?
Well, I mean, here's what it comes down to. Every single one of us have a limited amount of time. That's it, right? All we're given is time. So when you look at success, if you choose to spend all of your time accumulating money, but you run out of time to be able to spend it and enjoy it, was that the best investment? Or if you spend all your time and all you're going to do is leave it behind for somebody else to enjoy. And so I think it really comes down to, in my world, and when I look at things, is what do you want to spend your time doing? What's the best, come back to what's the best investment you can be making right now? Is the best investment in a memory? Is the best investment in your future because you need to pay for education in 10 years? Is the best investment in creating a retirement so that, early, like you were talking about, so that you can build memories later? The number one thing that I just always encourage people to realize is the only moment you have is the moment you're in right now. So even when you're spending that or investing that or thinking about that, is how can you make the most of this moment and pull success out of this moment? But as you were alluding to, I mean, it's going to mean different things to different people. However, I have yet to meet a person who spent their life only pursuing money, who at the end of it was completely satisfied with the way that things went.
That's really true. And sorry for thank you for validating that. So I can actually so, well, I'm actually doing things that I like to do. And I think, at this point, I would say for me is to find ways to say no to things that I'm not interested or that's not relevant to me. And my wife's always tell me that you're too nice to say no. Like I would go on and help people do things that I'm off my goal, right, to achieve what I wanted to do, and I couldn't say no to that. So, so that's something that I need to work on.
Yeah, saying no is important. One of the things so when you talk about this, I'm going to unpack this really quick. When I talk about redefining success, what I like to say is a lot of people are chasing the return on investment. What's the bottom line? What did I get? What did I make for my money? And what I like to tell people is that real prosperity and real success is found in a different ROI, what I call return on intention. And I bring that up because what you just said, one of the return on intentions that I find is probably the most ignored by business owners is what I call your focus ROI. And your focus ROI is your return on individual. And there was a book written a number of years ago called Leaders Eat Last. And I really think this book has done more harm than good. And let me tell you real quick why. Is because what happens, it sounds really good from a service standpoint, but when a leader eats last, what happens? You end up with a leader who is hangry, not focused, and can't think about what they're doing. And leaders need to be completely focused and not emotionally drained. So when a leader eats first, they can actually serve their community better. And the reason I say that is the world is telling us serve your employees, serve other people, do this. And if we don't prioritize starting with ourselves, then what we end up with is, at the end of the day, we're so exhausted, like we fall into the recliner or into a chair, and we end up watching TV or scrolling through our phones, just hoping that bedtime will come, and we're ignoring the people that are important to us. And one of the signs of that, why do I tell you that story, is an inability to say no. When you have a return on individual and you're focusing on yourself, you're like, no, I can say no to that, because the most important person to begin my investment in is me.
Hmm. Yeah, well, actually going to bring up that, return on investment. But if I could ask as a small business owner standpoint, right,
Yep.
we do need to make money, right? We
Oh,
do need to
sure.
make profit to keep the lights on, to keep whatever that is, within our company. Would you mind to give an example of how focusing on oneself can actually help others in a good way?
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the things, let's be careful, right? We do need to make money. But what I've discovered is, when you focus on return on intention, and there's 4 elements of return on intention, the 4th one is return on investment. It is, the money side of things. But what I've found is that it's, when you focus on return on intention, you actually end up making more money because you're focused on the right things. And you asked how kind of focusing on yourself. Let me give you kind of a great example. And it's what I was alluding to, but I'll tell you from my own personal life. So when I was uncovering and discovering this, I had a good friend of mine who challenged me. I had been traveling for business, right? I was out trying to get new business and trying to grow my business. And I had been on the road 20 of 28 days in February, out in business meetings and speaking and everything else you can think of, right? I was doing all those things. And a good friend of mine asked me, he said, I just want to know why you hate your family. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, no, I've never known anybody who's gone from home that often that doesn't hate his family. And so I started out with all these excuses, like, no, you don't understand. I'm out doing business. I'm doing it for them. I'm speaking for them. I'm trying to grow my business. And it brought me to this point of like, oh my goodness, maybe he's right. And he said, look, here's what I want you to do. He's like, quit trying so hard in businesses. And this is what we do at business owners. We think we have a business. We think we have a sales problem. We think we have a marketing problem. We think we have all these problems in our business. And I'm going to tell you, I've yet to meet a business owner who has a business problem. Every single business owner I've met has one of 3 other problems. They have a connection to God problem. They have a connection to themselves problem, or they have a connection to their family problem. Like, they're not taking care of their body, they're not taking care of their family, or they're not taking care of themselves spiritually. And he said, here's what I want you to do. He's like, I don't even want you to go into the office until 10:30. He's like, I want you to just slow down, and I want you to focus on your family. I want you to focus on your spirituality, and I want you to focus on your body. And then at 10:30, you can go into the office. And like any business owner, I'm scared out of my mind. What do you mean? By 10:30, do you know how much work I can get done? If I'm in the office at 7, do you know how much work I can get done by 10:30? How am I ever going to get all this done? A few things happen. One, I was so completely refocused, right? I was connected to my wife and my kids in ways that I'd never been before. I'd worked out, so I was feeling healthy. I was spiritually aligned, so I felt like I had direction and purpose on what I was supposed to do in the day. And I came into the office and I had more to give to my employees. But that's not all that happens, Swire. As business owners, we have this tendency to think that I'm the only person that can do it, and I'm the only person that can do it right. And because I didn't come in until 10:30, my teams actually stepped up and started taking over things that I was keeping them from doing, and they were doing a better job than I was doing. And I didn't realize it until I got out of their way. And so sometimes in our businesses, the biggest leadership clog is us. We're the biggest thing standing in the way of our employees growing or discovering that they can do more or stepping into greater leadership, because we think we have to be there. And so by focusing on myself, not only do I bring more to the business, but I get out of the way of my employees.
That's actually really true, and that's a common thing happen in small business, because you are the face of business. You are the expert in every single thing. Come down to picking up the phone, accounting software. But I actually talked to another guest on the show. He runs a business now. His goal, like you said, is to take longer and longer vacation every year.
Mm,
Because if at first it's very scary. He took, I think it's 3 days off. Nothing happened. The company still here, and he's done a week, 2 weeks. Now he's up to like 2.5 weeks right now. His
yeah.
goal ultimately is to run the business by itself. Where he could be gone like half of the time. So if you're able to do that, I think that would be a certain way that you achieve your success. Your business is up and running while you're gone. You're doing the things that you like.
Well, I mean, why do we start businesses? I mean, maybe that's a better question. Why does someone even start a business? Typically, what they say they want is freedom, right? They're trying to create freedom for themselves. And I don't know, are you familiar with Robert Kiyosaki and his cash flow quadrants?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what most of us end up doing is we end up creating the S quadrant, the small business, which is we're having to run it. But there's a difference in owning a small business and being in the weeds every day, as he describes, versus being a owner, where someone else is taking care of the day to day, but you're getting to take advantage of the income. And that's probably the hardest shift for most business owners, is to move out of being the S and into the owner category. But until you do that, until you find a way to take a week off, 2 weeks off, 3 weeks off, until you find a way not to come in until 10:30 and watch your people grow, you're going to stay stuck in that S quadrant, which is a limited amount of freedom. I think it's a little bit deceptive, because you think you have freedom, but you don't really have freedom in that instance. Right.
Yeah, if you don't work, then you have no business. So like imagine you can really train your team and let them go a little bit. If they could do, maybe they like the example that I give you about is, yes, it's not him who's running the business, but if it is up to 60% or however many percent that are acceptable to your client, then that's good. It doesn't have to be you. No one can ever be like you. You're just you, right?
Right.
But if you are training the employees, or you have partner that could build up to the same level, and sometimes they do better job than
They
you do,
do. Yeah.
and then that's where you really want to let go, and you never want to do that again. You let them go and do their work, and then you just watch.
Absolutely. And that's the best place to be. One of the greatest joys that I've had in business, somebody has asked me, what's my gift in business? And what I really think it is seeing potential inside of people that they don't see inside of themselves. And so I have hired people that I have moved into positions that they would never have imagined that they would have made a career out of in their entire life. And it's things that I can't do well. Like, I just can see, hey, this person would be really, really good at doing X, Y, Z. And then I move them into that position. And they're like, what? No, I'm not very good at this. I'm like, just keep going. And then all of a sudden they find out they've got a natural gifting, and that they actually are better. They're doing it better than anybody else in the company could do it. And so when you can recognize that in your employees, you give a gift to them, but also to yourself, because you actually create bandwidth and growth inside of your company that you didn't have prior.
Okay. Let me ask you this question, following a lot of what we talked about. Let's assume it's this family-owned business, right? It's not their first day in business. They develop a good clientele. Maybe they actually have a lot of experience for the business. So, and they feel stuck, right? They, like kind of the example that we're using, they feel like they have to be in the business all the time. They have to work in the business all the time, but they have other things that they might want to do. They might want to go to their kids' football game, or they want to go, camping with the family, whatever that they enjoy to do. So how would you advise us to define the goal to make it fit, so then we could, allow us to actually have more time to do things that we love to do?
Well, so if you're really struggling that much, I mean, it starts with kind of some of the basics, which are, come home and put this thing away for the night, and see if the business is still there in the morning when you wake up. Because I think what we have to do, like, the easy answer is, well, go on a vacation and see what happens. No, I think that the business owner like that, it's going to be too hard. I'm a big fan of baby steps. So maybe it is, I'm going to build a habit that every night I go home and I turn my phone off at 7, and I'm not going to turn it back on until 7 in the morning, which forces you to disconnect from what's going on at work and only be connected to your family. And you're like, there's two things that are going on, which is, well, that's not very hard. And then there's the other side of that you start to do is like, but what if something happens in the middle of the night? What am I going to do? Right. There's that reaction. But what we have to kind of begin to do is wean ourselves from the urgency that we don't have permission to rest. And the greatest danger in family business, especially if you end up with like siblings and things like that, or a spouse in the family business, is you don't ever spend any time not talking about the business. Like, when do you ever talk about things that have nothing to do with business? The greatest danger that I've seen in family businesses regarding family relationship is family businesses where there are siblings in the business and siblings outside of the business. And maybe they will go on vacation, but on the vacation, they spend the entire time talking about business, and the family who's not in the business feels alienated. The best thing you could do is create that space not to talk about the business. So it starts by shutting your phone off every night. Maybe then it starts by, I'm going to take a 3 or 4 day weekend. Maybe it moves into, I'm going to take a 3 to 4 day weekend. Then maybe it moves into, I'm going to take a week off. Maybe I'm going to move into, taking 2 weeks off. Again, I think you slowly build up baby steps. But the number one thing that I found is the people who trust that actually find the business doesn't need them as bad as they think it needs them. And they're their biggest obstacle.
Well, I want to share one thing, and it's not as nice as the one that you mentioned. I'm in sales, right? So I handle a lot of the sales within the company.
Yeah.
And I took a week-long vacation to the East Coast, right? So
Yeah.
not in the office. It's actually worked for me sales-wise because I did tell my client that I will be away for a week, gone. Don't have a lot of access that you normally accustomed to. A lot of time as a salesperson, I have to constantly follow up so people will actually purchase from me. But while I was gone for the week-long vacation, customer actually reach out the first time, right? not have, they wanted to order while I'm on vacation. And then at the end, I have to really put in maybe an hour and a half while we're back to the hotel, which I don't mind anyway. But then I was closing so many deals on that week compared to what I normally would do. So sometimes let the customer know that they have an urgency to order, and then you'll be away. So try that. Maybe that will actually help you close more deals.
Well, and I think the other thing too, don't underestimate the fact that you gave yourself some space to rest. And in that rest, you didn't, one of the things I know about, I'm in sales myself. One of the things I know in sales is you sell differently when you have to have the sale versus when you're just kind of doing business and you're getting a sale. And sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you can sound more desperate than maybe when you're relaxed and on vacation, right? And it's not anything you consciously are doing. It's a subconscious thing that's happening. And that's the reason why I come back to that return on individual, just as part of the return on intention. It's one of the reasons it's so important to take care of yourself, because you could be unintentionally selling with this really, really needy mindset that you don't even recognize is there in a space like vacation or other things like that. Helps you get into a place of like, hey, I'm just relaxing right now. This week is not about sales. And you find the sales are easier.
Yeah, I really like that. And if you're spending time to take care of yourself, it shows, right? You come in a happier person if you take care of a body. Sorry if I use another fitness analogy. Like, people like to laugh with individuals who have a lot of muscles. They think that they are not smart. But we don't know that person. They could have a PhD, or they could be the smartest person. They just have a lot of muscles. On the other hand, you can have the smartest mind in the world, but then if you don't have the body to show for, you can't really support yourself. Then you are nothing. Right? If you're smart as well and you have declining health, that doesn't mean anything to you with all the money in the world.
We'll come back to the time equation that we started with, right? If you only have a limited amount of time, then at the end of the day, what good is it if you don't have your health? If you squander everything and you didn't take care of your body and you've got all that wealth, health will also be one of the great equalizer when it comes to time.
Eric, do you think that the conversation, I know that you help a lot of entrepreneur and business owner about, planning for their financial success. Over the past 2 years, do you think the conversation that you have had to your client have changed? Are people more aware of the happiness and health, for the past 2 years?
No, I think that you've seen a lot of people. I'm going to say yes and no. I would say
Okay.
there was a season where we saw people do that, but if things have been opening up, I'm watching people begin to fall back into old habits, right? So we had a season where, yes, that was happening. I think we're sitting in a moment of being able to awaken people like, hey, don't forget what this was like. Don't forget how good this was and the things that you were focused on, because those are the things that really matter.
Okay. I think I like that. I like that answer actually, because if you're in small business, there are helpful things that came out from the pandemic. You actually have a lot of tools that are available to you right now that wasn't available back then. And
That's right.
then when what people are accommodating, if you don't have a corner office looking at the ocean and you're just doing virtual meeting, that's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to dress appropriately, have the right light, but then the cost for doing business is lower at some point on
Mm,
operating costs. And
yeah.
actually, a lot of big companies are actually not renting their price office anymore. They have people staying at home. So I think that there's a lot of changes, and I think, do you think going back to where they accustomed to is good, or are they really thinking about different chapters for their life
Well,
during the past 2
I
years?
mean, I guess it really depends on the business. So let me tell you what I mean by that. In my business, we are very, very, very high culture. And the relationship of the people that come together and how we work together is super important. So being in the office a certain amount of time is important to help reinforce the culture and the people and how we love on each other and take care of each other as employees. Now, I have remote workers as well who live in other states and things like that, but we still emphasize connection time every single day and then getting together face to face once a quarter. If a business is low culture, I think you could do whatever you want to. It's hard to sustain a business that's low culture, but it come down to say, even if people are working remotely, if you're a business owner, I think you still have to find ways to bring people together, because there is something that there are certain things you can't do over Zoom, like share a meal and things like that, that build longer term relationships for teams.
Okay. So what would you advise? I know we touch on a couple of them, that to a business owner who come to you say, I'm really overworked. There are success in terms of dollars in my
Yeah.
business, but then I'm not happy. I do run into those people from time to time.
Yeah.
Good success in my business. I'm making a lot of money, but I'm just miserable. I'm not happy. What would you advise them to do?
Well, my first statement would be let go. Because what they realize they're not doing is they're holding on so tight. They're like white knuckles, just like, I'm just holding on to this bill. It's so successful if I let go. And what they're afraid of is that it might fail, or it might not continue success. And it's like, trust that what got you here will continue to take you forward, but quit holding on so tight. I mean, here's the number one problem with return on investment. You just kind of spoke into this. Return on investment has you pursuing the world from two places. You're either stuck in fear or greed. And that's what happens with a person who's super successful. Maybe they've been fearful to a certain point, and then fear converted into greed. Oh my goodness, look how much I'm making. I want to make more. I want to make more. And all of that comes from a scarcity mindset, as in, I can never have enough. We were talking about this before the show started, but John D. Rockefeller is known for making the quote. Somebody asked him, how much is enough? And he said, just a little bit more. It's tough to really have success when you're holding on that tight, right? When you just simply cannot let go and you're living in that scarcity, and scarcity then pushes you into this mindset of, how do I protect everything that I've built? I've just got to protect it. I've got to protect it. And return on intention really is about living in abundance and thinking about impact. And when you think about impact, you've got to let go. So I come back to that phrase I've made. If somebody's in that place, the very first thing is let go and realize you're stuck in this loop you're not going to get out of. And the only way to change your trajectory is to do something different. And here's my other challenge. If for some reason what I'm suggesting doesn't work, I give you permission to go back to doing what you were doing before. But I have yet to find anybody who trusts that process, who hasn't found greater return on investment because they were seeking more peace and more certainty and more impact for themselves.
Sometimes it's an interesting conversation, especially over cocktails, and you talk to your friends, and if I tell them I really have enough right now, and they say, why don't you want more? Don't you want this, that, and whatever club cars that available? Not really. I do want my family to live happy and go to the school that they wanted to do for my kids, but then don't really want to. Maybe if you let's say if you are a $5 million company, what would it take? How does your lifestyle changes if let's say you can go to 500 million? Everything will change. Like
Right.
you have no time, the complexity, the level of involvement that you have to be in are totally different. Are you ready for it?
Well, not only are you ready for it, but why are you doing it? I mean, what a tragedy to grow a business from 5 million to 500 million and then find out that you hate the business. Right? I mean, that would be a terrible place to be. But not only that, how much rewarding to grow to a 5 to a 7 or a 10 million business, but be completely certain and confident in the things that you're doing and really enjoy it. I mean, one of the things that I do tell business owners, if you don't know your why, if you don't know your purpose of being in business beyond making a dollar, you really probably shouldn't continue in business because you're just chasing a dollar and the dollar will never give you any satisfaction. I mean, I know why, I know what I want to grow my business to, but the purpose is in serving other business owners and serving other families and creating more impact. I keep coming back to these words, but creating more impact in the community, in the world, and creating more prosperity inside of families. And prosperity is not money. Prosperity is connection, and prosperity is time, and prosperity is relationship. Those are the things that I really define as prosperity. Money comes along with that. But if I can help other business owners do that, then what a gift I get to give to other business owners. So that's a reason to grow. But to grow because, hey, I want to be 10 million is not, that's a fear, greed, scarcity kind of mindset, as we were talking about a minute ago.
Yeah, I want to give one example. When we think about investing, we like to quote Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett invests to the point that we couldn't imagine, but then he decided to give all his money away when he passes. Right. But then he's still investing every day because that's what he loves to do. But then at the end, he's giving all away. And he announced it and invite others to do so. So if the greatest investor, quote unquote, of all time are able to do that. So what is the priority? I think, you mentioned it a couple of times. What is the priority? Are you ready for it? Do you really want that at that point? So I think that's some of the question that I think you brought up, during the conversation today.
Yeah, no, you've got to know what other people have said this, but what is your why? What is your why for what you're doing and what you're pursuing? And without a really good, solid why, you end up chasing things for the sake of chasing it. And it feels like you're stuck on a hamster wheel. It feels like you're not going anywhere. When you have a why, you can see the purpose and you find little mini markers along the way where you're achieving that purpose, but you can see what the future looks like. And that helps drive that desire.
Eric, thank you so much for bringing on all the questions today. So that gives me a lot to think about. For a listener who might have individual question and wanted to reach out to you, what would be a good way?
Yeah, the best way to get in touch with me is to go to my website, ericl360, ericl360.com. And on that page, like there's all my contact information. I mean, from a standpoint, you want to reach out to me, you want to follow me on social media, you want to watch YouTube videos, you want to, anything that you want to do to connect with me is all on that page. You can set up a time if you want to visit with me. That's the best way to get in touch with me, ericl360.com.
Thank you so much for coming on today, Eric.
Thank you, Swire. It's been a pleasure.